Hello there, and welcome to yet another wonderful and exciting adventure called My Dog Will Eat My Face, the number one podcast with undertakers. I actually can't claim that. I'm totally making that up. I just pulled out of nowhere. Please don't sue me. If you do, I don't have anything. So it just wastes your time. Anyway, welcome to the podcast. And I wanted to touch back on the original topic of this podcast a little bit, since it was originally formed to discuss my pending uh, departure from this mortal coil. I wanted to share an experience that I've had with you, and yet another epiphany that I had not that long ago. The first part is I had the joy of meeting with a funeral home that was sort of handpicked with some help from my hospice social worker. She knows them, has known them for a long time, and they were willing to come out to my place to meet me and talk about things, and uh, were very accommodating. So they were sort of an easy pick, if you want to call it that, to at least try. I mean, he probably was going to win whatever I was looking to do, no matter what, unless they like opened the door and he punched me in the throat right away or something. But he didn't. He did not punch me in the throat. So I sat down and I actually planned, at least in part, my own funeral. And that is an interesting position to be in. Obviously, it's the first time I've ever done it. That's what I told him. You have to guide me along here. I've never done this before. He kindly asked, "Oh, it's your first time?" Like, yeah, it's my first time. He's like, "Oh, that's okay. I'll guide you along." So he was very understanding. But beyond that, even there was another realization that I had. Of course, middle of the night realization, and something that I shared with some friends and family that frankly really surprised them or shocked them, maybe is a better word. It was something they totally did not expect. But before I get into that, let me first talk about my fun filled day with the mortuary director. So, going into that endeavor, I really didn't know what to expect. I wasn't lying. I've truly never done that before. And it's what you would expect to be an awkward experience. And I don't know why I pronounced awkward just now, octward. That was a bizarre brain neuron misfire. Anyway, it was not as awkward as you may assume. Diving into the details of who you want notified when you die, what sort of celebration of life do you want, or a memorial? Do you want a prayer? Do you want it to be secular? Down to picking the music. And it was very surreal. But I have to tell you, it could be that my mortuary director that I spoke to is just so good at his job, which I'm told he is, that he made me feel like I was just picking out a new hairstyle to try on. It, it was not in any way sorrowful or sad or negative. There were definitely parts of it where I was pausing and asking myself, is this really happening right now? And having to answer back, yes, this is where you are. Yeah. All systems are detecting the same input. Yep. There's no errors in the code. This is real. There were definitely a few moments like that, but at no point did it turn to a terrific sense of lament or anguish or fear or even self pity. In fact, when I spoke to this individual, I think I joked around with him about as much as I would with the next fellow. I'm a rather friendly person. I like to joke around. I have a very dry sense of humor. I know if you're a listener, this is not a shock. And so he was not too dissimilar from me in that nature. So we kind of jabbed back and forth a little a little banter here and there, and it was on. He was honestly like I was just talking to someone, and I don't know who I'm having a beer with, or a friend of mine at work, or something like that, a friendly colleague, or anything like that. It was so incredibly ordinary. I was sort of disappointed. There was no grand PowerPoint of we're going to wheel your body into the morgue and then we're going to transport you to the mortuary and embalm you, which is this 30-point process. And once it was nothing grotesque or crazy like that. It was very benign. And I know that I do a lot of the time joke when I am under stress. It is a natural defense of mine. I do it a lot even if I'm happy, and I do it a lot if I'm sad. I just do it a lot. But no, I know I do definitely deviate into sort of a jovial attitude when I'm undergoing some sort of significant stress. And that apparently matched this individual's personality perfectly, as my social worker promised it would, so kudos to her. My social worker, I bet, can beat up your social worker. Anyway, So it was nothing grim. It was nothing boring. It was nothing debilitating. It was nothing it was nothing negative. I have to say that. In fact, I may have to go further than that. Because when that was all done and closed away and done and he left, I saw it as a positive experience. In a very bizarre way, I found relief and enjoyment with that endeavor, planning my own funeral. And that was not really expected. I wasn't expecting that. Um, but it was really a non starter. There was no, big climatic clashing of drums and bells and Dies Irae playing or anything like that. It felt like I bought a vacuum or something. I don't know. It worked out very well. And further than that, it felt good to communicate with someone some of the things that I've percolated in my head. It's like, well, when I die, what music do I want played there? This was the first time I ever had a chance to really tell someone. I have thought about it. I don't know if everyone does. Maybe I'm just a freak and do it. But I have thought about that off and on for years. But I don't think I ever communicated that to anyone because that topic is so taboo. You can't really bring that up in an elevator with coworkers on Monday morning. So it felt like I finally told someone what I was thinking would be a good selection, or at least a start of music that I would like played. But here's the one problem. It doesn't really matter so much what I would like at the funeral or memorial or celebration of life or pick up sticks party, whatever you want to call it, function. Um, it doesn't really matter what I feel about that because I'm not the victim. Yeah, I'm dead, but I'm not the victim. In my opinion, it's always the survivors, the family, the loved ones that are the victims. Because they're the ones that are going to have to endure. When I die, all my accounts are settled here on this earth. I'm back down to zero, and the world can figure it all out on its own. But that's something I realized, so I wanted them to communicate with my family and ask them what they want at such an event. I don't know if they're going to be able to add much more because they are the victim. It is harder to think about that. If I were planning my brother's funeral, oh my God, it'd be awful. Just awful. So I gave a good starting point. If there's some things that they think that they would like, I told them to please let the mortuary know. Or me, because I'll tell them whatever. Or my social worker. Any one of those three is fine. And since then, I've not heard much feedback from family, but that's to be expected. A lot of people don't like to think about that sort of thing. But it's not really a bad thing. That's what I came out of that interface thinking. This function, by whichever name you may give it, doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's a closure. It closes the books and seals it with wax, and that's it. And that's important for survivors to have. And it's important to me now to know that at least I've nudged and helped, I think, I hope, a little bit to get them to that point. Because I have heard horror stories of the difficulty and the drama surrounding the planning of a loved one's funeral suddenly, including my own mother. It is not a fun event when it suddenly slaps you in the face. And that's how people usually get it, because no one likes to plan for these sorts of things. It's sort of a taboo topic. It's not taboo to me, obviously. I did a podcast on it. So I'm comfortable talking about it. And I'll even go further. I can't pick, other than taking my own life, I can't pick how I die, where I die, when I die, or anything like that. Again, unless I punch my own ticket out, which I don't plan to do. But if it's a normal death, it's really something that's out of your control. So it's not something I live in fear of. It will happen, and that will be that. But there are some things into the planning that got me excited, actually. At first, I was adamant about being buried and not cremated because I wanted to scare children, still possibly, if my body popped out somewhere in a flood or something. I didn't really give it any thought. In other words, but cremation is far cheaper. You shouldn't spend a ton of money, in my mind, on disposing of a body. Um, that's just, in my view, silly. So I've decided to go with that cremation. And beyond that, I decided where I want my ashes to be spread. I might have mentioned this before, but I told my family I want them to go to Tivoli, Italy. and spread them in the reflective pool outside the open dining room at Hadrian's Villa, where I've been before. Hadrian is my most favorite Roman emperor, and me being a Roman history buff, my ashes just falling into the pool of water. I mean, it's just a reflection pool, and it still works. 2,000 years later, there's still water going into it. That gave me, I feel, power on the final seal of my existence. So if they pull, I told them to do it. They might get arrested, might get caught. I hope not. But if they pull it off, and I'll give them the monetary resources to do so. That I know is for sure. I've got good policies in place for them. But if they pull that off, that means that I have sealed my life under my own terms. And in a way, just made one more statement to this earth, to this universe, who I am, and that I was here. And having that feeling is absolutely a feeling of closure. It's a terminus. It's a terminus that I have defined, that I have selected, that I have given instruction and resources to fulfill on. It has given me control to some extent, even after I am long dead. And I think choosing that, even though it's obscure to everyone else, why I think Hadrian is my favorite emperor, I have my reasons. And why I want it in that specific pool, I have my reasons. I could blabber on about that, but it'd probably be a senior level, master's level history class at a university for me to explain it all. If listeners want me to share those reasons and talk about why that's what I want, let me know. I'll tell you. Okay, how about that? But otherwise, I have my reasons. They're good reasons, too, I think. Why would I think they're bad reasons? I'm going to do something terribly stupid. Yeah. No, of course I think they're good reasons. Anyway, but if you really want to know it, send me a message somehow. Find me online and just say, tell us. Comment on Spotify. That's the easiest way to probably reach me. Or send an email or whatever. Anyway, so instead of going through that exercise, I did not come out feeling vexed or scared or uncertain. I came out feeling like I had more power than I realized. And that having taken care of these, at least some of these details, I mean, my family could leave it just as it is, too. They don't have to include something. I just told them to include it if they want in the planning. But they could just leave it as it is. And it's paid for through my life insurance, and it's a done deal. They don't have to do that except smuggle human remains into a foreign country and deviously Shawshank Redemption style dump the ashes into an ancient reflection pool. No big deal. They can pull it off. I did some really crazy stuff when I was there. Like there was no one there when I went there. It was like me and three people, and we had a guide, and they would walk around, and I would trail off on my own. I even one time crawled through a hole in a wall and ended up in a huge vaulted hallway that spread both directions. There's stairs going up on one side, down on the other. And I felt like I was Indiana Jones, man. I felt like I was exploring these ruins for the first time ever. I didn't get in trouble because they didn't see me squirm my way through a little hole in a wall, which is what I literally did, and found a whole other section that had absolutely no tourists, no attendees, no tour guides. And what's the worst that could happen? End up in a Tivoli jail? Go on. Wonder what jail food is in Tivoli. Probably gnocchi. It's not bad. Come on. Anyway, I did have a feeling of relief, like a weight was lifted, that at least my family doesn't have to be dealing with a sort of chaotic flash mob experience of what to do when I pass. And everything is spelled out for them and will be paid for them. So I came out of that happy not only that I did the right thing for my loved ones, they're victims in this case, but I also closed off my existence in my own way, in my own style, and defined very clearly my own terminus on this earth. Now, after this event, I had some friends and family members saying, God, how can you go through that by yourself? Family should have been there, friends should have been there to, to hold your hand or to help you. I mean, they couldn't imagine sitting by themselves planning their own funeral with an undertaker. And it wasn't like that at all. So I told them that, and they were really surprised, thinking that there was something that needed a lot of, loved one support. But to me, it wasn't dramatic at all. It wasn't. I felt better when he left than before he came in. He improved my life, knowing that this much more is now handled and taken care of for the people I love. So if you're out there, even if you're perfectly healthy, at a certain point, I recommend doing this, planning your own funeral. So your loved ones are not frantically trying to put it all together for you, while at the same time grieving your loss. That is just cruel. So if you can spare some time, took me about an hour to say what I wanted and pick and learn how it's done, and that was it. If you can do that, I highly recommend it. Much like you should have your own living will. Not because you're sick with something or you work in a dangerous position, because you don't know what in the world is going to happen. You could get hit by a bus tomorrow. You could get picked up by a swarm of crows and dropped on the Empire State Building or something bizarre. I don't know. We don't know when our end is going to come and how bizarre it might be. There are a lot of bizarre sudden deaths out there. I'm sure you all know that much. So I'm just saying, having these things in place, like a will, insurance, a planned funeral with a mortician, they bring relief, not stress, because you know you're doing everything you can to support your loved ones. And this leads me to the other epiphany. It's my new favorite word, epiphany, that I had one night. And it's something I shared with my father and some friends. Even though I've had some mood swings with things happening where I was stressed and really upset, I have mood swings like anyone else. When I looked at the whole core of my life and where I am now, I'm actually happy in life, even though I'm dying and I'm in hospice and I've got all the horrible, slow death experiences that go along with it. I do find joy in my life every single day. And when I've told some people that, they were shocked. One friend yelled, "How? How can you be joyful? Do you hate yourself or something?" Like, no, no. It's nothing like that. I could be on a desert island and find joy. Inner joy and true joy comes from within, not from without. Sure, there's nice things, but to have that inner joy, to know that you've lived a good life and are trying to live a good life, continue to do so until the end. Perhaps you too then can experience joy in the face of your own mortality. I hate to say this quote again. Marcus Aurelius, my good old buddy, again said, "Death is not something to be feared, but rather never having truly lived." And I already know that I kicked that issue out of the stadium, or I don't know, sports, give me a break. I handled that very well. I can't think of a metaphor, a sport metaphor. I did a very good job doing that. So, about every single day, I absolutely laugh out loud, mostly because of my dog. And the truth of the matter is, even despite all the physical issues I have, I actually have a good life. I barely get by financially, but welcome to the planet. Most people are feeling that way these days, it seems. So, oh wow, there's that. But I've actually taken steps to improve that, and they're noticeable. I have a wonderful dog that loves me dearly. He's my shadow, he's my friend, he goes everywhere I goes. One of these days I'm going to have a fear of using the bathroom by myself. Like if I'm in a public restroom and I have to go poop, I'm going to have to get some stranger to stand there and watch me so I can relax to finally go. I need to be watched when I use the bathroom because I'm so used to it now. My dog's sitting there as I'm going, watching me. Oh, no, I'm not really going to do that. I'm not really a freak, I promise. Anyway, you get my point. But yeah, I realized that I have a pretty good life externally, even. I've got a dog that loves me, I love him. We give each other a lot of care, a lot of affection. I've never seen anyone, human or dog or any other species, give as much affection as my dog does. He is incredibly affectionate. So I have that. I live in a comfortable, well decorated apartment in a good part of town. There's not, street riots downstairs or anything. Have a pretty quiet life, which allows me to think of these things. Isolation, who knew? The philosophers were right. It is a gift. It is a gift to be able to look into yourself, analyze yourself, and figure out what's important to you, and making decisive action to see they be completed. For example, preparing for your own death so your family is not left holding the bag. You can just as easily ignore it. It's uncomfortable for a lot of people. But if you're in that quiet, that isolation, and you have that introspection, you can learn so much about yourself. and how strong you really can be. You hear all those stories about how driven and strong human beings can be. You look at natural disasters, you look at the world wars, you look at the end of the Holocaust when American forces and Soviet forces were rolling into concentration camps, seeing those who had yet still survived, although a few, more than a few, a lot were still going to die anyway because they're in such bad state. You see all these terrible, terrible things, but we also always hear how incredibly strong humans are, how adaptable they are. As a species, it's truly the human endurance that allowed it to populate the earth. It's not our vicious claws and teeth, I'll tell you that. Otherwise, it'd be the polar bears running everything. But no, it's our endurance. And as Livy himself said, all things can be mastered through endurance. When you see yourself through that self analysis and self reflection, you start to see that strength within you. And a calamity doesn't have to exist for you to be able to enjoy it and be thankful for it and be aware of it. But a lot of self reflection, peeling away all those layers of the onion, you start to see that inner strength we all have as a species. Our endurance, our ability to survive is truly incredible. And when you do that self reflection, as I try, and I think everyone else should try, you might be able to see that incredible endurance inside yourself without any sort of calamity. And see that you can have internal joy no matter where you are, what's happening. And I think that's when, no matter what happens to you, you will have mastered your life completely. That's my 2 cents on that topic, anyway. I expect change. Well, my friends, with all that said, I'm going to close out this podcast and hopefully be in touch again in the near future. I know my podcasts are more sporadic than I would normally want, but as I've said before, my time is limited, in which I'm conscious. Sometimes I'm out for 30 plus hours. It's very unfortunate, but it is what it is. And when I'm up and about, I do everything I can to enjoy what life I can enjoy. And I do. I really do. I'm not making it up. Just put me on YouTube and follow me around my apartment. I I think I'd come off as kind of a jovial, goofy guy if you followed me around. I'm serious. If you followed me around the apartment, I talk to my dog all day. I mean, I play video games. It's not like my life is one big dramatic, Kafka novel. It's it's almost a John Candy special. Oh, I miss John Candy. Anyway, with all that said, I will try to keep publishing as much as I can with my abilities. If you want to support the podcast further, just go to Spotify. You can support it through there. Easiest is go to patreon.com/my dog will eat my face. Any sort of financial support would be appreciated because, as I just said, unlike all of us, we all need a little extra support. But that also being said, you already again gave me the best possible gift, which is a venue through which I can do this self analysis, and can express myself, and can beam myself to the world at hand. So, for that, I thank you deeply from my heart, and I do mean it sincerely. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. I know very well that time is not infinite, so I appreciate every moment a person gives me. I'll try to keep in touch. That's my plan. Hopefully, maybe even next week. But for now, I have to say, off Wiedersehen.